Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see so many brilliant minds coming together even after a heavy lunch. Yeah, we welcome you at the session. The role of solar in energy transition and investment plans. Solar energy. We work for ISA, and we have partnered together with SE for All for this particular event. For us, solar energy is not just energy like any other energy forms. Hydropower or coal-fired power plants. Solar energy is not just energy; it cuts through many streams. It has helped to change lives. It has helped to change livelihoods. It has helped to have stronger health systems, stronger education system. We are right now working with about 117 member countries to help them undertake energy transition on their own. And for that, we have number of programs, we have number of activities which we are doing on our own, but we are also doing a lot of activities with our partner organization, and SE for All is one of them. Increasingly, the government across the world are prioritizing solar energy as part of their energy transition plan, also their NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And in about 92 countries out of 192 countries have submitted their NDC targets, which includes solar energy as one of their targets to have energy transition as well as reduce emissions. And for that, I mean, we are working with the member countries to help them through number of programs, essentially nine programs in different areas, as well as we are helping them to build capacity. And we want, out of 192 countries, we want all the countries to have solar energy as one of the major tool for the energy transition, as well as for reducing emissions. We are working with some of the countries in doing sort of a global stock take of solar. We have another event tomorrow for that as well. And that helps the countries to take stock of how the solar energy is helping them to reduce emissions as well as achieve their nationally determined contributions. Countries are also developing their energy transition and investment plans. And in the energy transition and investment plan, solar energy is playing a key role because, as I said in the beginning, that solar energy is not just energy. It cut across various streams. It cut across education. It cut across health. It cut across income generating activities. It helps communities to be resilient to climate change. And that's the reason we wanted to have this session with all of you together to discuss the role of solar energy transition and the investment plan. I would like to invite my colleague Alvin Jose, who is the program manager energy transition planning SE for All, to take over and take over the proceedings. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sava and the International Solar Alliance for facilitating this session. My name is Alvin Jose, and I'm a program manager on energy transition planning and investment for SE for All. It's great to see a full house over here right now, even after lunch. So that's great, and also after a rest day, So it's good to see a full pack. So it really shows that the folks here are committed to renewables, especially solar. Uh, Before we have a great panel today for you to kind of discuss the evolution of solar, some of the key trends that we have seen in the past decade. What do we expect? What are the current trends that we see now? How do we see the future holding? And before I do that and actually have the panel on, I have a bunch of slides so that I don't want to put you back into sleep, but I have a few slides that I want to go through and just set up a bit of a context of what we are going to talk about. And then we'll can get into some sessions and hopefully after that we can have some interactive audience questions and some discussions. So next slide, please. Oh, there is a clicker here. Thank you. hmm It doesn't seem to. Oh yeah, thank you. So I'll tell you next then if you could just do that. So we have essentially for this particular context setting, three main items that we'll be covering. One is solar PV, specifically, of course, there's a lot of solar, but specifically the role of solar PV that we see as a central technology to energy transitions in the renewable space. When we talk of just energy transition, the kind of green value chains and the opportunities that are there, what does the role of solar really play? And then we want to bring you a bit of the case of Ghana. NC for All, with some other partners, recently had helped develop the Ghana's energy transition and investment plan. And so we would like to share a bit of the key insights of that, and then we would like to kind of show how the role of solar is there, just so that we have a nice little country context, and then we can dive into the different discussion points. Next slide, please. So this is a slide I think all of us know. The to reach net zero 2050, there would be solar will dominantly play a role in the renewable energy deployment that has to come in the future. Of course, it is going to be supplemented also with a good amount of wind and some other technologies. But I think the trend is very clear. We have seen that in the past decades, solar has been one of the key champions in the renewable energy space. And to achieve net zero, solar will continue to play a key role. Uh, and for us, we have heard about the tripling of renewables, and we have heard a lot around how doubling of renewables, and of course, not to forget the doubling of energy efficiency will be key to achieving net zero and 1.5 degrees. But I think we'll have to think about a bit beyond the headline. Is we see a lot of capacity coming in, but how can we convert the capacity into generation? I think that's where the reality will lie on how and when we can achieve the net zero. Next slide, please. In terms of the investment, we just actually, I think it was RAN 21's recent report that says that for the first time, investment in clean energy technologies has been first time it has dominated more than conventional or fossil fuel assets. And within that, solar really plays a key role. And we see that as the years are going on, right from 2020. Of course, these couple of years were a bit of a difficulty as well because of COVID and the kind of reconciliations that we had to do. But I think the trend is pretty clear. Solar has been steady. It has been increasing, whilst you see in other renewables, some global issues do play in the role, especially COVID played a big role in how wind deployment was kind of a bit arrested. So that kind of shows that solar is actually also very resilient technology in terms of global price shocks and kind of the global geopolitical influences. Certainly, there's a lot needs to be done, but just to say that it is a very good technology to bank on. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned, uh, the financial maturity to achieve solars is actually one of the key uh, attractiveness for countries and investors that they look into. One of the things that solar also has done, in fact, which is not spoken much about, is that while the capacities have increased, the investments have increased, the solar efficiencies have also increased. So we do see that the solar uh, deployment has not been the same or stuck in a particular snapshot. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And I think the key point when we discuss on renewable energy deployment and any kind of clean energy technology deployment, the first questions that government says that, especially in the global south, is that why us? Why should we do this? And there are multiple reasons why countries should be starting to doing this. Of course, you don't want to be left behind while the world is moving into renewable energy uh, and developing countries need to already think and strategize around it. But it is also a good evidence base is there that investing into clean energy technologies, especially renewable energy, has been shown to create good jobs, solid jobs. And in fact, if you're able to localize them, the value chain actually adds more. So, and in that trend has been essentially increasing. You could see that from 2010, the trend has pretty much doubled in terms of up to almost 14 million jobs in the renewable energy space, and almost half of it has been dominated by solar. So, and and solar is a very interesting technology because it's one of those technologies in the renewable space that has been shown to be really a democratic technology. You can have large scale IPP projects deployed, but at the same time, it is a technology that provides affordable solutions right at the small little stalls somebody runs to keep the light or the electric stuffs on. So it's one of those technologies that can speak to many uh, contexts and backings. So the issue of just transition is also really taken care of in that. There is also solar as a value chain in jobs, right from the R&D, the production, the assembly, all the way to installation. There's a wide variety of opportunities that are really in it. And so, yeah, so it is great for jobs, great for investment, great for the climate. Everything is great. So I guess one of the key things that when SE for All has thought about this is that how do we get countries to start really thinking about this seriously? And and there are some a lot of the and you know what, if it is so great, why are not the investments happening? Is the questions that some might ask. Well, to do that, I guess there are three, four key things that need to happen. First is that there needs to be very high level sensitization and awareness at a political level that this is an important sphere to invest in. Countries don't just change their investment strategies based on, just some, kind of research and evidence that is out there. They need to see some real backing. Second is that they need to be featured into very detailed investment planning exercises because that's how countries would understand what the kind of trade-offs that they're looking at. Because if they have a significant oil and gas base, if they were to move it away, or how does that impact? What are the kind of human capital investments that need to be done? So all these things that have to be put into place. And finally, I think it is to also to tell these countries that the opportunity for investment is now. If they're going to delay their transition, they're essentially what they're going to be doing is only catching up a race that they're already going to be left behind. So this is what we're trying to say is to tell the global south at least to come ahead of the curve and try to already think and make a new paradigm shifting space and work in it. So we did this work in Ghana, and the Ghana Energy Transition Investment Plan was launched at the UN General Assembly this year. We had built it off Ghana's energy transition framework, which they had launched last year. And we are very proud to say that we actually, through this exercise, the energy transition framework talked of a 2070 net zero pathway. We were able to do a reanalysis, do a remodeling exercise, and convince the government to move towards a 2060 net zero pathway and invest more into clean energy sources and technology deployment. So that is a very big, let's say, achievement that we think it is ours. And now we're now into the next phase of this project where we are going to be starting to help the country to start mobilizing the investments. And in that context, maybe I just would like to show you is that to achieve net zero in Ghana, Ghana currently has around 5 gigawatts of installed capacity. And Ghana's net zero will be primarily driven by two things: electrification of end users, and that electrification will be powered by renewable energy technologies and efficiencies and resource efficiency where possible. Uh, and to do that, uh, if Ghana's primary pollution, or let's say the major emission sectors, are the transportation sector, the industries, and the power sector. Transportation is the biggest emitter, and if transport has to decarbonize, electrification of the fleet becomes a big intervention. And that electrification has to be driven by the renewable sources. So that really would require a lot of capacity to really come in. So from today's 5 gigawatts, we see around 170 gigawatts of total installed capacity that needs to come into the country. We see that at least 80% of this is going to be driven by solar. Majority of this being utility scale grid solar, but also Ghana has around 15% of access yet to be closed. So a lot of mini grid solutions, DRE solutions, needs to be deployed as well. And at the same time, batteries will play a key role to make sure that the grids are able to take in this amount of variable renewable electricity. Uh, and for us, when we are looking at solar, we are looking at almost 3 gigawatts per year of installations that is needed until 2035, and around 6 to 12 gigawatts of installation that happens after 2040 to 20 through 2060. So that's a lot of deployment that needs to happen, and this is the size of, let's say, intervention that is really needed when we talk of net zero. Globally, when we talk about it, it seems to be a very uh, achievable task as well. I'm not saying that it is not achievable at the national, but it is also, you're talking of a lot of local context in a country like Ghana, where they have to where they don't have local manufacturing. A lot of it is foreign investors coming in. Traditional macroeconomic issues that pretty much plague a lot of these countries where investments have to happen. Issues such as investing in foreign exchange reserves, getting returned in local currencies. All of these issues, like, are the challenges that really needs to be faced, and this kind of provides us the opportunity to raise the profile of this issue to the highest of the government authorities. So we have a backing of the president of Ghana on this. We are now setting up an energy transition office in the office of the presidency to start working on high level issues, and then start like really deploying some projects. And we are going to be picking up some low hanging fruits as we go along. In terms of investments, well, and that's why, because it looks a bit big number when you look at the capacity deployment. When you look at investments, uh, the whole of Ghana to achieve its net zero, it will require around $550 billion in the next 40 years. Uh, that is above business as usual. So this is the amount of investment that is needed across, right? When I say energy, I'm not talking about only the power sector. You're talking of investments in electric vehicles, e-cook stoves, moving away cement to different kind of technologies, steel sector. So all of that encompasses that. But of course, the investments of the solar is going to be the key. We are looking at of almost $3,000 million of investment needs to come in by 2060. And to do that, of course, we need to make sure that there is right ecosystems in place and the right kind of market structures that are in place. We took an assessment of also kind of, let's say, the trade-off in terms of what happens when the government does invest into net zero, and we see that there will be a net effect of jobs generated. We see around 500,000, 2 million jobs that are going to be created. For this, we just look at the direct, indirect and induced, but there's also going to be a lot of correlatory effects that happens, but we don't capture that. Out of this, almost one third of this is going to come from solar alone. So, and especially in Ghana's case, this is something that we have not really, let's say, investigated further. Is that Ghana also has a lot of critical minerals also there. So, how does sustainable extractive industries plus localization of electric vehicles and battery development, how can that play in terms of the green value chain and deployment, is something that we see that there will be a net positive effect, but to what extent we have not really investigated yet. Okay, so that is the context setting that I have for now that I've said. Just a bit of a background that what we have been doing, and with that, then I'll actually request all the panelists for this session to please come on to the and take their seats. Please. So, so what I'll first do is maybe I'll try to reduce my the burden of the moderator. And what I'll try to do is to first pass off the mic to each one of you. Maybe first, if you could just introduce yourselves, and then I'll go to asking some of the questions that I have in mind for you. So maybe first I'll ask David to start from your side. If you could just introduce yourself and maybe a bit of the role, what you're doing right now. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Alvin. I'm David Mutisia. Kenyan. I come from Kenya. I'm working with the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. I'm the acting director of energy efficiency and conservation, and that is the role I'm playing. And I've been working hand in hand with the SE for among other partners to bring up energy efficiency and cooling, and among other aspects. Thank you very much.
So my name is Rana Adib. I'm the executive director of Rent in One Renewables Now. We're the largest global multi-stakeholder community of players from governments, industry, NGOs, and science and academia, all working together to move to renewables. What does move to renewables mean from our side? It's actually not only a topic that should happen here at COP in the climate context, but especially when we're looking at developing countries, it's about economic development, it's about health, it's about bringing energy for all energy consuming sectors and fueling our economies and societies. Um, that's one aspect. The other one, I think, that's why I'm very happy that you started with energy efficiency, is underlining very much that it's not only about the renewable supply, but it's many pillars that are energy efficiency, phasing out fossil fuels or building energy systems that do not depend on fossil fuels and renewable energy. And the other aspect, it's not only about changing our energy system, but the economy and the society that need to be centered around renewables. So I'm happy. Thanks for the invitation. Happy, looking forward to discussion.
Thank you so much, Alvin. My name is Sonia Dunlop. I'm the CEO of the Global Solar Council. We represent the solar PV industry, the whole value chain from around the world. And I'm really keen to talk about the just transition aspect of this event because just transition is so important. Solar employs 4 million people around the world. It's a very jobs rich industry, and so can provide much of the new employment opportunities from the energy transition. But we just need to make sure that those just energy transition partnerships and those transition plans that many companies now are going to have to put in place really include science-based and pragmatic measures in terms of the energy transition and making sure it is a just transition as well.
Great. So thank you very much, Alvin. And my name is Hubert Zahn, representing the Energy Commission. I'm here on behalf of the Executive Secretary, Engineer Oscar Mona Neza. Basically, my role is to handle the enforcement of renewable energies and energy efficiency at the Ghana Energy Commission. And looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. My name is Hongpeng Liu. I'm a director of energy division from United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. So we are one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations and an intergovernmental platform to support member states uh, for policy dialogues and also capacity building and also knowledge product. So our work in energy sector is mainly focused on implementation of SDG 7 and also energy transition. Uh, Solar energy is one of very important option for energy transition in Asia Pacific, and that's also one of the effective technology for achieving SDG 7. Very glad to have this opportunity to share with you about the work in Asia Pacific. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to all of you for that introduction, and thanks for some of the great that. And this is a great panel, so I'm really excited. Maybe first I'll take the mic to Rana. Rana, you saw some of the data that I just showed, right? There has been a lot of progress, and REN 21 has also taken our its outlook on renewables, and we have seen a steady increase and a lot of momentum behind solar. Now, in your view, what do you think has happened right, and how do we maintain this or really scale? Because when you're talking of tripling, maybe business as usual will not cut it, right? So, some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think, and that's really something to acknowledge. I mean, from Rent on one side, we're tracking the renewable markets, industry trends, and investment every year. And in 2020, so in the Renewables Global States report, very clearly, PV stands out from all technologies. That's a reality. It's in terms of installed capacities, plus 36%, investment plus 42% globally, and we compare this with all the other technology that had negative numbers, actually. Um, so, in terms of market growth, amazing. I think one of the things that is really interesting when you're looking at the installed capacities globally, we also see another very important trend, which is that more than 40% of the new installed capacities in 2022 were solar rooftop capacities, which is also showing that it's not only about providing energy or electricity supply, but it's actually an opportunity to change the energy governance globally. Um, why? Rooftop solar means it is investment of citizens, of cities, of corporations. And I think this is really a topic we need to, for me, a very inspiring story around solar PV. We really need to push out more because we have the possibilities for all countries and a diversity of players in the countries to engage in the energy transition and benefit from it. So if you ask me, how can we maintain basically this movement? I think on solar PV very much by specifically onboarding those players into the transition, but also creating the right policy and regulatory framework so that they're able to engage here, because IPPs is still not possible in every country in the world. We know from the energy consuming sector that they are longing for getting renewable electricity and they are not able to do so all the time. So, one part is enabling those players to really engage. The other one, and I will not go in detail because I'm pretty sure that Sonia will address this, is how do we strengthen basically a renewable energy industry, not only in some countries with a regional concentration, but more globally. And here I would like to rather bring in one aspect, which is for me another very strategic ally, which we often ignore, it the electricity consuming sectors and the energy consuming sectors, whether we're speaking about industry, buildings, transport, or agriculture. And here, I think there are some super interesting examples, also on the African continent, with two and three wheelers that are renewable electricity based. Um, Other possibilities when we look at the case of Nigeria, we're basically bringing the electricity supply with solar PV or mini grids together with the energy consumption in agriculture. We have a real win-win situation because it allows to increase the yields with irrigation, for instance, of the agricultural production. It allows to have offset. I always forget this word in English. Off-taker, thank you. Off-takers for the energy supply players. And it's actually a way to also address on the government side um, the rural exodus and ensure food security. So I think for me, this is a real opportunity. We need to broaden our narratives in the future and really see that there are strategic allies in other economic sectors, and also at the government level and regulatory frameworks.
Thanks, Rana. I think that's an excellent rundown. In fact, I didn't know that 40% of this is DRE and especially solar. Solar rooftop certainly could be a game changer in many ways, especially when we are looking at the Africa context and kind of the second phase or wave of solar deployment in a lot of countries that are kind of a bit tired by big IPP rollouts as well, and there's not much space left on the grid. Maybe for that, maybe then I'll first then move the mic to David. David, so Kenya is developing its energy transition investment plan. Uh, Kenya also has a very high renewable share in its grid, right? Uh, I think, of course, and nobody is holding Kenya accountable for its climate emissions or something, but Kenya is already doing so much, right? Ensuring that the grid is green. How will you maintain that? And I think my question is more towards while maintaining the high renewable share in the grid, how would you ensure, or let's say, what could be the role that solar can play in this? Do you have some current examples of that, or And what is the kind of future that the Ministry of Energy is thinking around?
Thank you, Alvin. First, before I go forward, I want to take you backwards a bit back, and tell you that solar has really brought a lot of revolution in my country. How? When I was growing up, there was a primitive lamp. I used to use a wick and paraffin and put the light on to study. And that was very primitive, and it was very bad to our health as children and as mothers. And then there was a time the government woke up and said no to paraffin on lighting. And then the solution to that was solar. And that time, Kenya was a dark country. But today you'll go and find small dots in the villages, right at the villages, because now that technology is available. The technology has been tried and it has reduced lighting problems in the villages. That is one transition going backwards. And it has taken short to bring that on. So we have invested in little lighting appliances, and we've improved the learning conditions of kids. And I'm sure, I'm not an economist, we've reduced in the amount of money we spend on treating opportunistic diseases that are caused by pollution using kerosene. So solar brought about a transition to kick out paraffin. Paraffin is still used in crowded urban areas, the slum areas, only for cooking now. And we are now having another impact on that to kick it out. And government is truly looking for solutions for cooking. And now we have a solution for lighting. That one I can tell you, solar has helped us to that. Our way of living in Africa, I want to share here, is not is a complicated way of settlement. We don't live in cities. You'll find many people scattered all over in small regions, small homes. Solar is a solution towards accessibility of electricity, because we can't all be reached by the grid. I can assure you, the way we stay in Kenya. Some areas are heavily invested and they can be reached through that national grid, but there are others, I can tell you, for the next 50 years, the national grid will not reach there because they are the climatic conditions that can't allow. It's arid. It's not possible for, but people live there because of their living conditions. They are herders, they are nomads, and they need energy. Solar has been the solution for that. Solar, again, has brought a lot of transition in our country, specifically because the small gadgets have been able to charge telephone. When you charge your telephone, we have another innovation which has brought a lot of revolution in the country, M-Pesa, banking. And now everybody in the village can now receive money from the city, buy things using M-Pesa. It has brought that revolution, and parents in the very awkward corners can receive money from their children in Nairobi. Now, that is moving back. Going forward, we have now set ambitious strategies and actions that will ensure energy access. We have a national energy electrification strategy that is pushing us to really move towards solar. And we have a one major program supported by donors like partners like World Bank. We call it Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Program. Now, that one is going to bring us closer to to attain universal access to electrification, because now it can now be mini grids, it can be a solution or a standalone solution. We have solutions that are going to revolutionize that action. And we are sure that this intervention will reach there. Now, the action plan going forward, we have been investing mostly on geothermal, hydros. Solar has also started now to get the mega attention from the government. The contribution is not so much. We have 3 gigawatts capacity, and solar is not really a major player. But going forward, we've now seen our plan is very aggressive because some of the renewable solutions are not extending so much like a hydros. We also have capacity for our geothermal. Our wind is the next thing, wind and solar. And solar is much more than most of those renewable resources that we have going forward. We are planning to invest in generation of 50 gigawatts by 2050. So that is our vision. It's very ambitious because it has to contribute to our 100 gigawatt ambition to bring about green growth in the entire spectrum of the economic growth of the country. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David. And you know what? What really stuck out to me was 3 points from that. One is the grids that you mentioned. Second is digitization and the role that it can play. And I think third is the ambition that you have set, 50 gigawatts, which has got Sonia very excited, by the way. So I was actually thinking of going first to Hong Kong, but maybe I'll first come to Sonia because I don't want to lose that excitement. So Sonia, you have just seen you know the amount of potential that there is in Ghana, the kind of ambition that Kenya has, and this is across the board, whenever we speak in the global South. Uh, what do you think really needs to happen? And maybe my question is more specific to the continent of Africa. What do you think is the role that the private sector can play, or let's say, what does the private sector need to drive this demand and to meet these kind of goals?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Alvin. And thank you also to everyone at the International Solar Alliance for everything you do to bring governments together. Everyone at Sustainable Energy for All, for energy, everything you do on energy access, and also REN21 for bringing all the different stakeholders together. It really is, we're such a strong and powerful coalition together. Um, really, congratulations on your 50 gigawatts target. That is truly incredible. I tell you a funny story. Kenya's very close to my heart because I went to Kenya for my honeymoon and I dragged my new husband to see a solar installation while on honeymoon in Nairobi to a solar training center. And so I'm proud to say that I came to visit PV in Nairobi. Then he actually divorced me several years later because I was too obsessed with solar panels. Um, but no, but to answer your question, I think one of the biggest barriers in terms of deployment of small scale distributed on grid and off grid PV across the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, the whole of the developing world, is cost of capital. And I'm very new at the Global Solar Council. I only started a month ago, but I've spent the last 5 years working to try and get the multilateral development banks and bilateral development finance institutions to put more money into renewables because they are the secret to reducing risk and reducing the cost of capital for these kinds of projects, often through local private banks, through companies like M-Pesa that you mentioned. And so that is the secret to then rolling out this absolutely transformational application of solar. It's so modular, it's so versatile, it can be so small scale, pico solar, but it is so transformational to the lives of the people who need it most. And so we need to make sure that the money is going all the way from the World Bank and the Global Solar Facility as well, all the way to the people at the very end of the line, at the end of the grid and beyond, to transform their lives. And so we can leapfrog a whole stage of the development in the electricity system. We don't need to replicate the grids of days of the past. We can build distributed renewable energy systems together with big long distance energy interconnections across continents to share the renewable resources across huge distances. In many ways, here in the Gulf, we can be powering the dinner time peak in India as well one day. And that's my dream as well, to reinvent a whole new energy system with solar at its heart.
Thanks, Sonia. So certainly, I think cost of capital, the WACC, has always come around in the conversations whenever we we talk. And I think I'll come back to that. In fact, it's one of the things that I want to talk about financing and how we can kind of get the whack down. But before that, maybe I'll maybe first move the mic to Hong Peng. Hong Peng, uh, you have been in the Asia Pacific region for many years. You have seen the transition happen in front of you. Uh, what is the learnings that you can maybe share from the Asia Pacific region on the transition that is happening right now? On what is the role that solar has played? What has, let's say, what are the right things that the governments have done in the region to kind of expand? Because it's Asia Pacific is kind of at the front and center of the transition fight. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good question. You know, for Asia Pacific, it's a quite a dynamic and a diverse region. So if you look at the different countries, and we have the country with access as an issue, and we also have a country already have 100% of electrification. So this is not an issue, but solar is always one of the priorities for those countries when they consider about the energy transition. Like for those countries, you know, we always say, you know, energy transition is a shift from the fossil-based energy system to renewable energy-based energy system. And we see the largest probably scale of the solar system in this region. We also see a lot of household-sized solar home systems in this region. So no matter large or small, that's all the part of the energy transition. The part of this just energy transition, I really think this kind of jobs is one of it, and the benefits for the women and the children in remote areas, in rural areas, that's another kind of just energy part of the just energy transition. And also we see our small island states, like in Pacific Island states, some of them, I think half of the small island states in the Pacific already committed 100% of renewable energy. But most of that is from solar, because those countries, they have quite abundant solar resources. And from our work, like in the UN system in Asia Pacific, we have this joint initiative, which mainly to work together to support the implementation of SDG 7. So if you look at the three target for this SDG 7, universal access, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, all linked with the solar. So solar is really the key, you know, to connect all these target. For example, even you mentioned the solar energy for clean cooking. That's also a recent kind of initiative. We work with some of the countries in Asia. At the beginning, I was really questioned about this solar home system for cooking until I see it. I saw this kind of system. That's really amazing. You know, they use a solar home system, and with these facilities, even with the solar kind of the stoves with the SIM card, and collect the data from each of these facilities. And with the centralized data system, you can just convert this kind of data to carbon credit. So that means whenever you use this system, you make money, because the payback period is 2 to 3 years for the cooking on itself. But then you have another 12 to 15 years you can make income. I really think solar actually energy changed the life of those, you know, populations in remote area. But from a larger scale, I won't say, you know, for Asia Pacific, we're really leading the global renewable energy, both solar and wind development, from the installation capacity, from the production, from supplies. So I really think, you know, Africa and Asia Pacific, there's a great potential to work together. I know there's a number of initiatives between Africa and Asia focused on renewable energy, in particular solar. And from the manufacturing side, from capacity building, and also from the joint initiative, the investment part. I know those like International Solar Alliance is also doing this work, and also the renewable energy associations in different countries. They're also looking at in ASEAN, in China, in India, and they are also looking at the African countries. So I really think, from SCAP side, we will be happy to work with the other continental like Africa and with our sister kind of economic commission in Africa to promote this cross-regional cooperation to promote solar and to share good practices and also knowledge product. And we can also even jointly develop a kind of initiatives with SE4 to see how we can bring countries from a different region together and with the focus on energy transition with the solar as a major part of it.
Thanks, Hong Peng. That's I think that's so fascinating, right? When we talk of solar, we talk of I mentioned in my intervention how it is a democratic technology, but over here you can see that it is also a technology that the global South can get together, and they don't need to wait for 20 years. They can already start talking to each other. There's so much of learning that has already happened between the continents. It can happen, and there is of course the lack that we always also can get in. And in fact, one of the points that actually I think Asia has done very good is on the intellectual part kind of things. And I think I'll come back to you on that particular question. But maybe before that, Herbert, I put Ghana on kind of on the spot, right? So what next now? We have an energy transition investment plan. What are the next steps now? How do we get the investments flowing?
Right. So thank you very much, Alvin. And as you rightly presented, Ghana is on the spotlight, and you can see the clear effort that has been made. But from the position of a regulator, which is a government agency, I think it's important that once others are here, they understand how far we have gotten. Now, one key thing is about institutional leadership. And you can see right from the start that this energy transition document is sitting at the apex, which is close to the office of the president. So it tells you that you need individuals who would act as champions, but you also need that buy-in from government. And so once in our case, we have the presidency getting involved in it and situating an office, a secretariat to champion this, then that is a clear step. Because in Africa, usually we have issues with politics when it comes to elections. So then when there's a change of government, somebody has his own vision, another person comes, he has his own, manifesto to read out. But what is the main target of the country? And once you have a transition document, we are all focused and working towards that. Now, when you look at all of this, those who are here as business communities, those who are here as private and investors, the question you keep on asking is, how do we invest in that space? And I'm happy Sonia is here. And a lot of the people who are in the RE space have asked, what is even the quality of equipment that are being brought in the name of projects to promote solar in Africa? So you have a lot of people who are getting refurbished solar panels, and just because there's potential in Africa, they come in the name of projects coming to install these products. And the question is, are we championing the whole idea of PV? So for a regulator like the Energy Commission, what we have done now is to come up with regulations that will set minimum performance for solar PV, for inverters, and for renewable energy batteries. And it's important that the solar community is aware of this, so that even if you have the intention of setting up a project, what is the quality of PVs that you are bringing? Because it's investment. Imagine somebody has spent so much money to bring in these products, and yet it's not achieving its goal. Number two, imagine a user who has invested in getting RE installed and it's not serving the purpose because these are substandard solar panels. So that is the whole agenda. And I wanted to put it in perspective that leadership, coming up with regulations and champions, have set the ball rolling now for investment to come in. Now to the big question, what do we need? As we have said, it is always important to create the avenue so that market players can jump into the market, is regulated, and you are very, very certain of your investment. So Ghana has taken the lead to do all of that. And we urge all of you who are private, who are financial, which will go into those details. How do we help individuals jump into this renewable space? Households, rural electrification. How do we go about to get these products in the market so that people can jump onto it? And for the manufacturers, take advantage. Sub-Saharan Africa, imagine you set up a manufacturing or assembling of renewable products. What does it mean for such a business person? You can serve the whole of the West African coast and even go Sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a bigger picture. And as we are saying, the avenue has been set, one, with the major document, which is the transition document with a clear vision. The budget is there. We know the investment costs. How can you help come into it? Regulatory requirements, we have set the regulations in place. We have the Renewable Energy Act. We have the renewable energy regulations for the various products so that your investments can be secured as well. So this is what we are doing as the regulator. Thank you.
Thanks, Herbert. I think this one of the things that I always have a debate on is the question of WAC. Is it perceived? Is it real? Yeah, certainly. Can the whole continent be really considered a monolith when it comes to WACs? Right? There are certainly more countries that are more conducive to investment or the others. But I think one thing that really sticks out is first, number one is, as you mentioned, a very clear political signal and a market signal to players that we are serious. Second, the right kind of ecosystems in terms of regulations, policy, that investments are like really, let's say, secured and that they're ensured that they happen. And maybe on this, maybe Rana, I'll come to you. If you could maybe list out now, and I know it's kind of sounds like a laundry list, but maybe a bit like, what do you think are, like, say, a few major things that now need to happen, and all countries have to make it happen. I'm sure that there are countries in different learning curves and implementation curves, but these basic sets have to be there, and then only we can get serious about tripling of solar or renewables.
I'll start probably with one which is a difficult one, but very important. It's a repurposing of fossil fuel subsidies to renewable energy and energy efficiency deployment. And I think it's obviously depending on where the countries are, what the starting points are. If you're an economy that depends in their activities mainly on fossil fuel income, or if you're a country that is importing all fossil fuel, is the situation is a different one. But we know that from 2022 over 21, fossil fuel subsidies have reached the maximum ever, plus 85% of increase. And if this money was actually directly shifted into investment and helping the renewable energy sector to evolve, the energy efficiency sector to evolve, that's an investment in the future and not an investment in the past. This is addressing the fact that countries do not spend money or lock themselves into infrastructure and realities that will not survive because they are not resilient. And it is also an investment into another energy or into another democracy, into another governance. So that's the first part. The other one is indeed when we're looking into market and regulator frameworks, I think there is a certain and it does not always need to be a liberalization of the markets. But what is important is that whatever market and regulatory frameworks are being set up, they allow for independent power producers. That's really fundamental. It's fundamental because the allies I spoke about before can otherwise not engage. It's important that an energy customer can choose where the electricity comes from or can become an energy producer. And if we're really honest, it's also a way to bring basically investment into the countries. So having off-takers is fundamental for the renewable energy industry. When we're looking into all the economic activities, these players have often access to another type of investment. This might be private sector investment for their own energy. And here I would bring another aspect to the table. I think we really need to, as a global community, we need to change the rule set when we're looking at the World Trade Organization's rules. Local value creation needs to be at the heart of the energy transition. It's a reality because energy is an enabler. Energy is not a purpose itself. And as an enabler, it's an enabler for jobs, it's an enabler for economic and societal development and benefits to society. And if we are not in a I think this, okay, it's still working. Okay. If we're not in a situation where a country can really also protect the country's interest or the society's interest in the country and ensure that a part of the wealth is basically being redistributed, we cannot benefit of the opportunity renewable energy presents. So I think that's really important. And in this context, and I'll build on probably the examples of Kenya and Ghana, I think we, as a global community, there are two aspects we really need to be honest about because they need to be addressed either at the national level or regionally. The first one is that not every country will start producing the own PV or build up the own PV manufacturer line. That's not real. So this requires a real regional collaboration. It's also necessary to do so when we're looking into the overall shift to a renewable-based energy system. It requires grid interconnection. And this is something that is also not only happening at the national level. So I think this is really important to take into account. And in this context, it's important to take into account that solar PV plays a major role, but is not the only technology that plays a role. So I think in Kenya, you rightly said it. I mean, you have the geothermal. Hydropower is very active in some regions on the continent. Wind is a complement. And when we're looking into the thermal parts, 50% of the energy consumption is actually thermal energy. And given the fact that access to technology is not always so easy on the solar PV side, probably, and we need also local solutions, solutions like solar thermal could probably be offer opportunities. So I think there's really this part of what is the role of the different technologies and acknowledging for the fact that these need to be assessed on a country by country basis, sometimes at the subnational level, and very certainly in a regional context. And I will end on one aspect because we always speak about the cost of finance. And I think here is a very big difference between Asia and the African continent. One of the reasons why some of the Asian countries are actually developing much easier and the interest or the cost of capital is lower is that local finance in the game at local currency, and the currency risk is not taken on or does not need to be taken on by the project developers. So I think on the African continent, for instance, there is really a need to bring the commercial banks and finance system into the renewable energy business to really address also the question of interest rates. In this context, we had a very interesting discussion with some developing countries, but also multi-stakeholder community. And there was really a call for creating more innovative frameworks also to have finance that would allow to incubate local solutions because there is a hunger for solutions, there's a hunger for empowerment. And I think that's probably something we'll need to develop during the next 4 years.
Thanks, Lorna. I think great points. Yes, the cost of financing is certainly different for both, and of course, local financing institutions is a key part of it. And some of the points that you mentioned, especially around the regulatory aspect, and I think yes, should not be like a cookie cutter approach regulatory, but it has to be really like very local and specific. And yes, I guess in terms of localization of the technology itself, it doesn't have to be every country has its own everything. It could be like a value chain based system that the region can support to each other. And maybe for this, David, I'll come back to you. Uh, you know, if you could just give us a bit of the sense on what are the current policies that support deployment of renewable energy in Kenya. And what do you think would be the future? What is the next set of things? As you mentioned, 50 gigawatts has to come in. That's a sizable amount of investment that is needed and capacity that needs to come in. So how is the government really thinking about actualizing that?
Thank you. We are aware and alert to the challenges that are coming. And I want to go back a bit to what Rana has shared with us here. That we need really to understand the space that we are living in, and we now have to do business with a competitiveness and openness and just. We just have to do it in the most correct way between the supplier, the supply side and the demand side. We have to balance all these aspects as we move forward. As we also move, we need to add value to what we need. So we give the electricity to the person. So what next? How much apart from lighting and the charging a mobile or listening to news, what else can this person do? So we are now looking at the productive use of electricity. And more so, productive use of renewable energy. We have a guideline, we have a roadmap. We're now working on a strategy to make economic gain, add value to agricultural value chains. What have you been doing? What can you do now with solar? Can you grind your grains without going to turn to a diesel grinder, posho mill? Are you likely to pump water and do some irrigation using solar? These are very simple technologies that are gaining very fast to move and be practical. So productive use of energy is very key in health, in agriculture, in all these aspects that we are discussing of creating wealth. So when we enlarge that productive use and economic growth of these communities that are using electricity, then I have my engineer here, Kehara. He is always convincing me that if we consume more, cost of the power will come down. That's a very complicated formula he uses. He's a young engineer, and he's the one who is in the center of the planning, the least cost development program. Okay, that's okay. Now, what we have also been seeing is that we have we have a policy now of enhancing energy planning, and we are doing it integrated national energy plan, so that we decentralize planning of energy access, electrification, bioenergy, energy efficiency to enhance awareness of the consumer in the far-flanked areas. We have 47 governments in Kenya. Decentralized planning has to be strengthened. And one of the things that they need now to do is to plan for their own energy, county energy plan. Then all these come together to get the integrated national energy plan to focus how we need to move forward and what we need to do and how can we work together in a partnership that can be helpful. So planning for energy has been enhanced in the country, and that is a policy direction that going forward from the Energy Act of 2019, there has to be 3-year cycle of energy planning, checking on the productive use of that energy, access renewable energy, more production of renewable energy in the space, and energy efficiency, and tapping. And I want to say here that a bigger chunk of our energy is coming from bio. Yes. And in Africa, we've been ignoring that fact. We need to tap that. We still do 69% of energy requirements derived directly from bio energy, which is not highly developed. So as we discuss issues to do with electrification in Africa, we also need action in development of biofuels, the use of energy itself, the way it is, to modernize it and enhance efficiency of how we utilize that. And then eventually we'll balance reduction of demand of some types of energy, because we can easily use cow dung, bioenergy. Then that other energy that is coming from electricity, you can use it now to get more value from that electron, that watt hour, to gain more, to enjoy life, and then eventually gain from reduction of emissions to the atmosphere. That is enhancing sustainability, at the same time enhancing economic growth and creation of wealth.
Thanks, David. So certainly, I think the integrated energy policy roadmap is something for at the county level, especially. I think that's very interesting that you have 47 uh,
Government.
governments that will create their own plans. Wow. on your plate then. Okay, so with that, maybe pass the mic to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, we heard, the financing, of course, is important, policy is important, but we also heard about grids as well, right? And Asia is known, has very good examples of connectivity, how it has used for regional energy cooperation, and transfer of renewable energy power. So if you could share some insights on how this has been done in Asia, some good examples for us.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Actually, compared to European continent and the African continent, the interconnectivity in Asia, it's a lag behind. We just started, and especially from ASEAN, from Southeast Asian countries, they developed the master plan for connectivity, power grid, ASEAN power grid. So the purpose of this connectivity is mainly to integrate more renewables. And the good news, last year, Singapore actually is the first country just signed the agreement to buy 100 megawatt from Laos, where mainly the hydropower to support Singapore and to achieve its net zero emissions. We always say, now transmission, now transition. Energy transition, you really need the transmission. According to IEA, if you achieve globally, if we achieve net zero emissions by 2050, we need 80 million kilometers of transmission. So that is much more than the existing transmission lines. So that means the investment needs and also the market integration, especially when you have this cross-border connectivity. You have a different power system, you have a different power market, the pricing systems, and also the regulatory framework. Need a lot of inter country, cross-country collaboration. So from ESCAP side, we actually last year, our member countries endorsed one regional roadmap. It's mainly focused on power system cross-border connectivity, which listed the 9 strategies from policy side, from a market mechanism, and also a regulatory framework. So the implementation of this regional roadmap is now our priorities. And come back to the how this will benefit, for the solar power. One example is like for China. 5 years ago, solar and wind installation increased rapidly, but the transmission is also behind this. The curtailment is very, very high. But after a few years, for expansion of transmissions, now it's reduced to almost 100% of this electricity from solar and wind could be absorbed, integrated into the power system. It's take the advantage of the high voltage transmission lines and also the HVDC. All these technologies spread across the country, and even few 1 or 2,000 kilometers from west to east. That is not a technical issue now, so it's already achieved. And also the generation from renewable energy rich areas in the west, transmitted to the load center in the east after 1,500 kilometers. So that's really a big achievement. It's also a good kind of practice. Could be also replicated to other. And the example I mentioned, the Singapore and the Laos, that also involved Malaysia and Thailand. This is the first multilateral electricity trade agreement in Southeast Asia. And after that, actually, the number of MOUs between Singapore and Cambodia, Singapore and Vietnam, it's already signed. And if you see this after like a few years, you will see more multilateral power trade agreement. And we also develop a new framework we call the Green Power Corridor. So that involves different countries, like especially in Northeast Asia, like Mongolia, China, Korea, and Japan. Those are the countries you have the high demand of energy. At the same time, like Mongolia, Russian Federation, and China, has renewable energy resources. We really want to promote this green power corridor and to integrate more renewables and from one place to another through these strengthened and enhanced transmission networks. But the issue is also the investment, where the money come from. ADB and AIB actually actively involved in this green power corridor, but the big challenge is who will borrow the money. When you have the cross-border connectivity involves the different countries, that really need to have a mechanism to just find who will be responsible for this investment. Even the beneficiary sometimes also reluctant to borrow money. So that I think we still need to work together with potential kind of investors. And also, I think probably the largest amount of the investment will come from the private sector. If you have a very clear target and also the initiatives, that is really need the government to drive this target, to set up a target, and also to come up with the mechanism and the initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Hongpeng. Thanks. Excellent. Some feedback on what's happening in Asia. So actually, David and Hubert, you guys are set, huh? Like you guys have your power pool set up. You have good relations. It's all should be happening, right? Like, but again, the issue of the grid, right? Oh, in Ghana, what do you think is the first thing that now needs to happen to the grid?
Yeah, so as Hompeng rightly said, the onus now lies on government or the regulator to set all this environment in place. Now, as a regulator, you are also a little bit careful trying to stick to a certain technology. Even though the world is saying that let's move to renewables, you have other people, other forms of, power generations. Now, that politics is there because they are telling you we can meet your capacity, whether through fossil fuels or thermal plants, whatever. But the bottom line is that there are international commitments as well. So, as much as possible, you need to look at how do you even liberalize this kind of, energy that you have, and renewables come in very handy. So, for us at Energy Commission or Ghana, the most important thing is to set the atmosphere. And as I rightly submitted, that you need to create the avenue in a way that whoever is coming in to invest does not have that feeling that he's going to lose. Because you rightly said, who is going to give the money? Now they are giving the money even with some reservations. So if all of these policies are not in place to guide, then it becomes very difficult. So for me, what I would say is that number one, we have to find a way of harmonizing some of these policies because also at the end of the day, they become a barrier. Some people will complain, well, if I go to my neighboring country, maybe Nigeria or Togo, I don't have to go through all of this to promote RE or renewable energy. Why is it that in Ghana you have a lot of technical barriers to trade? But the question again is, you might get an easy access in there. You invest in setting up your power plants through RE, and then you have a challenge because there's a change of government. Nothing to protect you in there. So there is a very unique situation when it comes to Africa. And some of these things you need to have policies in place that will serve as a guidance. And I'm very passionate about this because there's a lot of investment that is needed in this space. But you cannot guarantee without putting things in place for whoever is coming in as a businessman. So again, harmonization has to be there, and then we should have a very clear mechanism in terms of financing. How do we support this space? And I think once we do that, we will be able to make some progress with the grid.
Yeah, so it's not only about, let's say, policies or regulation at the national level, but also regional and speaking to each other. So that's very important. Sonia, so what do you think has to happen in the space of this, the grids and the role that they play, and especially what can the private sector play? What have you seen that works, please?
Undoubtedly, one of the things we need in terms of grids is almost regional renewable energy super grids in every major region of the world, connecting those resources to the centers of demand. And that is just one of the things we need in order to really deliver the of renewables target by 2030. Because we are sat here at COP28 Dubai, and the thing that we are all working towards is securing the tripling of renewables target to 11 terawatts by 2030, which we got support for almost 130 countries now. And we just need to make sure it's in the official conclusions of the COP. And I know that there are two big countries, China and India, who are talking about maybe taking the energy targets out of the negotiated outcome, but we need to make sure that the renewables target really stays there. And issues as well, energy efficiency. So we need to deliver that as well, because to deliver it, we're going to need these long distance energy and connections, call them regional supergrids. We're going to need the standards that make sure that this is a quality transition, what you were talking about, and we want to work with a key organization to try and deliver that and a just transition. We need to make sure that we have a common sense, pragmatic industrial strategy to deliver the supply chain, to deliver the tripling of renewables target that brings in manufacturing, every level of the supply chain, and the project developers. We have Lightsource BP sitting here, a key part of this transition, living sort of transition, BP and Lightsource in one company. And we need to think also about recycling, end of life. You know, we need to be able to recover all of the key elements of all these different energy technologies, including solar. Solar, you can recycle up to 95% of the panel, no problems. We have members who can do this for you, and this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. And we need to make sure the small solar home systems are reaching those people who need it most in Tanzania, like you mentioned, in Kenya and beyond. And just harnessing the power of the sun for the next leap in the transition in the development of humankind, and also in the continuation of humankind. And you know, I'm really struck by the power of the sun. You mentioned solar cooking, I think. You mentioned something about cooking with solar. Well, actually, there was a Solar Cookers International has been cooking for 10 carrots. If you're hungry, yeah, every day at about lunchtime. It takes a few hours, but it works. It's totally edible. And you can also get hybrid solar cookers now that use both the heat from the sun with a mirror system and have some PV as well. They're my favorite ones. And they make the most delicious meals as well.
Thanks, Sonia, for that. In fact, if I can take my greatest flexibility, I think one of the things that really, and I think you mentioned that we need to harness the power of the sun. And one of the key things I think in the grids that really need to happen is to how can we move all the loads in the non-solar hours into solar hours. And I think that will be the game changer. We'll have to manage that, and that's the way I think we'll have to kind of work with the grids, because a lot of the grid innovation that really needs to happen will take time, will take a lot of money. But in the meanwhile, we'll have to kind of put in the right kind of policy and as incentives in this place to do this. Rana, you wanted to come in quickly because I wanted to actually give the mic to somebody, some of the audience questions, but I'm happy to take a quick intervention from you and then. Yeah.
It's really quickly. I think we need to harvest the power of the sun, but we also need to harvest the power of the people.
Exactly.
Also, when it is about grid development, and I think one of the learning is we're speaking about massive infrastructure here. We do not very often speak about social licensing when it comes to the grids, but it is also in many developing countries where you might have the grid going over the villages without them having electricity. It's a major concern, and I think it's important to bring people and sun together.
Excellent. So before, yeah, I think maybe first what I'll try to do is look at the time. Yeah, we have a bit of time. We have 15 minutes. So maybe what I can do is then hand over to the audience some questions. I saw first at the back the hand, so I'll kind of work from back to front if it's okay, just to make sure that we are covering everybody. So if you could just please introduce yourself first and pose your question. You turn at the back, please. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I came late for the program, but I got in when the gentleman from Ghana was speaking. Two things or two questions from me. One of them is how is it possible to make this available to women in the rural communities? I am from Nigeria and I am a community advocate. Now you go to the rural communities, you find out that most of them they're not on the grid at all. And these women, they still rely on fuel wood to be able to cook food for their families. And we all know what kind of health impacts that has for them. So how is it that this thing you just mentioned now can be made available to these women? Then the second thing about regulation, yes, you need a regulatory environment to attract investment. But you also mentioned that change of government. So it's still the same thing. If you have a policy in place, whether the policy is watertight or not, once there's a change in government, then that policy will probably cease to operate. So how is it that we can make policy be sustainable to be able to transcend beyond the governmental administrations? Thank you.
So, the question is, women are at the forefront of the transition.
Yeah.
How can we include them, and how can we make policies resilient to the transition? Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And I think the whole idea about women empowerment is very key. And you rightly mentioned there are a lot of technologies that can now go in to help our mothers. And I say our mothers because they are the ones who are the breadwinners. And you would find them usually in the local communities going about hunting for firewood just to come and, prepare something for the table. Now there are a lot of technologies, with the solar cooking and all of that. And that's why I said these are opportunities. For me as a regulator, it is hard. We need to find the investment, and that is why we said for companies who are into these technologies, these are avenues that you can come in to support. Because it's clear that we need to support these people to avoid all these, emissions that they would have encountered through burning and cooking through the fumes. The other thing that we also realized was the introduction of some of these pico solar that can go in there to help. But again, it's about the quality of products. And I keep on saying that people take advantage of this, that they know that there is a loophole. And what is the loophole? That we need access to electricity for some of these areas. With the Pico solar lanterns, and all those things, government will indeed welcome it when you try to bring such a project in to support such communities. What is the quality of products you are bringing in? And most of these businessmen are just thinking of how to get their money from government, and then within a week, a month, or two, these solars do not work again. And it's quite sad. And once it happens that way, you have bad experience with the community. And so no matter what you do, when you try to introduce it the next time, they say, oh, please, this didn't serve our purpose. And that is why we keep on saying that, look, why don't we find a way of promoting the technology, but also making sure that those who will benefit from it are indeed benefiting from the technology and accepting it when it comes to that. The other, or the big issue also about transition of government, is that we need to look at all of this beyond individual manifestos of political leaders. It should be a collective thing. And that is said, you have a transition document that is looking at a target up to a certain year. So regardless of what political party comes in, why don't we work together in achieving the content of the document? So it is up to the citizens to make this very clear. Because if a political leader comes and says, "This is my vision for you," and the public can say, "Well, you have a vision that is pushing it up to 2050 or 2030. Why don't you stick to that?" So I urge that all of these things should be influenced in the national plan as well, so that there is that buy-in and awareness creation. Remember, the public is very discerning. And once they are aware of the content, it doesn't matter. They will give you the vote to come into power. And so when they see that you are abusing that, this is what we want as a target. Yet you come with your individual manifesto to tell us what you want to do. Meanwhile, it should be national. So again, it shouldn't be about theories. It shouldn't be about documentations, but it should be about actions. And you permit me to borrow that word, that we need to have action. Otherwise, all of these documents will just become documents on the shelf without any clear strategy to implement them. So that's my submission.
So I know that Rana wanted to first come in, and Rana did touch upon the people's. And I know that on the product quality, you really want to come in. I know that.
Just, you know how to check quality? You check the company as a member of the Global Solar Council.
Okay, we'll make sure that Sonia is in touch with both David and Hubert to give a list of the best companies out there for sure. But Rana, please.
I think I would like to build on two aspects. The reality is for the transitions, we need to have like the governments, industry, finance, civil society, and the citizens involved. And I think at all, and this is basically engaging in really seeing like what is needed from those players to really engage in the transition and support the transition and creating really, whether it is county planning, whether it is at the city level, a dialogue, but a structured multi-stakeholder planning process from the beginning of infrastructure development to the implementation is a way of guaranteeing that even though you might have a change in government, these stakeholders are on board and are empowered to make sure that governments still stick to it. Another part, and I also think given the fact that sometimes we are a bit in a double standard discussion between energy security in northern OECD countries and energy access in developing countries, I think there is really a necessity that as a global community, we start to integrate the right to energy access in our constitutions. And that is a movement which is also possible in developing countries. I take the example of Cape Town in South Africa, has sued the national government to make sure that IPPs are possible. So we see globally that there is a trend that civil society organizations, citizens, cities can basically sue the national government. I'm not saying that we should sue Kenya and Ghana. Please don't misunderstand me. But it is a way to make sure that there is a continuity because the legal infrastructure and institutional infrastructure is also a way to ensure empowerment regardless of government in place.
David, please.
Rana, let me assure you, in Kenya, there is a gentleman called Umutata. There is a constitution which is clear now. You try anything that is out, the guy will take you to court. There's a lot of noise now in these in our countries now, and people are becoming very bold, and the consumers know their rights. And the private sector is very alive, and even before you bring an innovation to regulate it, the private sector in Kenya will be ahead of you. Like now they're struggling with e-mobility. The guys are already in the streets, bringing buses, bicycles. You really have, as a government, to run after them when you empower them. And that is one key. Private sector and civil society. They need to be very much involved in the standards, in the dialogue, implementation, and the standards and everything. And it's working where a little democracy has been allowed.
Okay, excellent. So then please, I think, yeah, you have raised your questions. If you could just please kindly introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Thank you. I'm Winnie Lawano from Tonga. I work under the government of Tonga with the Energy Department. And my question, first of all, thank you, moderator and panelists. My question, first of all, I'll comment for the very informative session, to which I agree with all you said. But one thing missing, none of you mentioned with the energy security, in particular the tariff. That is what Tonga in this transition is struggling with. From the government perspectives, communities, NGOs, our tariff is not even going down. It's tripling, just like our target. And while we are getting into higher RE target every year, it's the same with our tariff. And I would like to have any comment, one or two will help, especially you have, regulators. We are regulators in our country as well, and we're trying all we can do, but that is just one thing that I'm missing from this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll just take a question from here as well, and we'll combine it and then we'll
Hello.
try to address it. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm France Knapp from Lightsource BP, we're a global solar and storage developer. And actually, my question fits into your question quite neatly. So, just to say thank you very much for all of the comments. And just sort of one of the big things, obviously, we are grid-led technology. And to Sonia's point, if every country in the world now competes on grid capacity, we're going to get stuck very quickly. And so I really reiterate the point on that. On Raina's point on cost of finance, and to your tariff point, really what we see as a private developer, if we have a bankable PPA and we have support on taking FX risk, actually their cost of capital, whether it's debt or equity, is very similar from France to Tonga, possibly. Honestly, that's the critical bit on the cost of capital, a bankable PPA and support on FX risk, alongside land rights protection, all the good stuff like that. And I just want to cover a couple of points. One on cost of capex. Obviously, we've been supported by the success of the Asian market on manufacturing. As the tripling target hopefully gets put into the conclusions this week, we do need alternates, but it's critical that that's done strategically. What actually are we talking about? What kind of technology are we talking about? What's going to be beneficial to markets like Kenya and Ghana? And then the final point I want to make actually is on skills and supply chain capacities. Another massive thing actually is the human capital, the human resource. We're going to all be competing for the same people. And again, so that's a huge thing for local content that could be developed. My question is twofold, and really support yours is one is for countries such as Kenya and Ghana. What can the private sector do better to be a long-term partner? We've heard about quality of products and how that can be answered. And then the second question is, how can development organizations such as the UN support the just transition on things like FX risk, on things like grid development, which is obviously huge FX risk or big capex requirements? Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. So maybe I'll kind of compress it into two main areas. One is the issue of tariff, and maybe how can countries, and I think there's always this question, right? To what extent does one subsidize? And if it is subsidized, is it cost reflective? Then are you going to be pulled into that chain? So maybe a bit of a thought around the tariff issue, and how can that be done and addressed? And second is the investment into human capital. I think that's something that I wanted to touch on, but that's a nice little segue because I think there's a lot of opportunities beyond just investments and just the kind of returns that we are looking at. There's a lot of knock-on effect. So maybe, yeah, anyone would like to take the mic first, please? Yeah.
Yeah. So in the case of Ghana, what we have done is that we have two separate regulatory organizations or commissions. One in charge of the economic regulations, which is the tariffs, and that is the Public Utility Regulatory Commission. And then you have the Energy Commission, where I work, which sets the technical unit of coming up with the standards and regulations of the product. Now, when you look at the tariffs per se, and I would like to give a disclaimer so that I don't have the permission of the PURC to speak on their behalf. But from my expertise, what happens is that there's a lot that goes into coming up with the tariffs. What Ghana is doing now is to introduce the net metering, also as a means of helping some of these people who are investing in the RE. In that case, you determine how much you want to feed into the grid and at what cost. So the PURC, which is the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, has clearly come up with a net metering tariff specifically for the RE space. And I'm sure we can take that up. I can share some notes with you and give you the necessary contacts to the regulatory organization in Ghana in charge of tariff setting. Yeah.
David?
I'll support Ghana on that and say, yes, most of the governments in Africa are also struggling with that. Struggling because it is tied to the cost of the capital that we inject in the development of RE. But we are struggling to lower the cost by doing some tax exemptions, especially for solar, and trying to make sure they are not abused in the chains. Then on what can we do together? I'm glad my brother Uganda is here. Am I right or wrong? And I want to challenge my engineer Kehara to go back there and see why my flag is not there. And how can this international solar alliance make sure those flags mean a lot even before we reach COP28 to COP29. What can regions be doing under which umbrella? And SE4O, you've really been doing good. So I expect going forward, we will see the East African region doing their regional solar alliance dialogues so that they can work out what the transition. And Uganda has also announced their transition moving forward. So as a bloc, we need to be talking to each other, harmonizing our standards, harmonizing our doing business together, pooling our resources, infrastructure together. And now we are doing business with the Uganda in electricity. We are doing business now. The transition lines with Ethiopia are working, and we are getting power from Ethiopia. That business ecosystem, we are doing also, we are completing the transition with Tanzania. As we approach these regions as a block, economic blocks, most of these energy efficiency approaches will succeed. We can't do this business isolated as a country because Ghana will tell you, you need a champion in Western region. Southern, we have a champion already. In East Africa, we are struggling to get there. So World Bank, SE4O, the ecosystem of UN, UNEP, and all that, they have their own programs that can make sure we come together. This alliance, I really want to challenge the leadership to put more energy. We say in our country, more kuni, more fire, so that we feel each other and build synergy.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could be Dr. Mathur at this stage, but but I'm humbly not. But I would certainly take that sentiment to him. And of course, we have our ISA colleagues, and Sabah is over here. Okay, excellent. So we need to have the next regional dialogue in Kenya. We'll have to talk to David. But Rana, yes, the issue of tariff. We heard mostly around the incentive, the regulatory, the ways of reducing capex at some level. But do you have any other thoughts on that?
So I think indeed what I mentioned before is working also with the commercial financial sector in the countries. That's one part. And then I think you coming from Tonga and us being here at COP, do you think, especially in this context of islands, there is still the loss and damage question, which is there, which is fundamental and I think needs to be integrated. And you spoke about tax exemption. I think there is also something we need to, it's a difficult topic. Lots of players don't want to hear it, but we need to have the discussion about solidarity taxation of wealth that is being redistributed, whether it is at the global level or whether it is at the national level. And when we look at the massive incomes of fossil fuel companies, but also fossil fuel producing and exporting economies, it's not about the money not being there. It's about a question of distribution and redistribution, basically, of this money. So I just think this is something that really links to the discussion also of a global, really anchoring the access, and I think SC4All is very clearly here, but the access to energy as a human right, I would say, and making sure, and that's where the UN systems play a role, that this is not only a target and words, but action.
Sonia, please. Okay, you had to go. Okay, so maybe with this, I'll kind of try to take 30 seconds or maybe in 10 seconds, if that's possible. One thing that you would like to see more done in the human capital side of things on the solar. 30 seconds.
R&D, we still need testing of solutions and ensuring they fit the need, the use. Secondly, that one.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, I'll build on that one and say, like, I would like to have Kenya as a member in Renton One so that you bring this in, as well as Ghana. Let's push this. No, the part on skills, I think there is, we did not really touch upon this. There is a massive skilling. And I also think this is, we will not be able to address the skilling gap only by the traditional ways of teaching, and capacity building. So I think there is really a need that that we move away a bit of our traditional way of thinking here and bring in digitization.
Yeah.
Massive online courses, the private sector into this to build up basically the capacities. But another aspect which I touched upon before is like this ideas and human capital of local players. I mean, I was on a panel, there was a 14-year-old Colombian kid that had written a book on renewable energy and how citizens and kids can be part of the transition. I just think it's like really acknowledging the resources and the innovation and capital that is there,
Yeah.
and find just ways that push us out of our comfort zones but are real
Yeah.
solutions.
Thank you.
Harmonized international training programs and harmonized international technical standards. Thank you.
Excellent. I think Hubert will just copy that, right?
She just took the wind out of my sail.
It's-
So it only tells you that we share the same ideas. And most importantly, action.
Okay,
Action to be able to work together. It shouldn't just be theories.
excellent. Hongfeng, please, last question.
I think South-South cooperation, for
Excellent.
human development, especially, share good practices
Yeah.
among the developing countries.
I think with that note, what we will try to do is that SC for All certainly is a very proud partner of International Solar Alliance. Thanks to International Solar Alliance for having this session for us. And we look forward to talking with you and how this South-South can really happen. Maybe that's the first one we can really take it across. And with that, I would like to close this session. Thanks to all the speakers and the audience for all the great questions. And thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you very much.